Okay, everyone, we are live with episode 19 of the Hunger for the Hustle podcast. Whether you're joining us now or later, live or later, anywhere in the world, we both welcome you with big open arms. I am joined today by my first Canadian guest. How about that? He is a very polite gentleman, like all Canadians are, of course. But more than that, he's a man of many, many talents. Michael Bridgman, my guest, has been an actor. He is an entrepreneur. He is a speaker. He is also the owner of Thank You Media, which I can't wait to talk about, and I've brought on board for my own business. Michael, live from Vancouver, BC. How are you today, sir?
Oh, I'm fantastic, Mr. Fowler. How are you, Jake?
I'm great, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, great and grateful. Love it. Love it. What time is it over there in Australia right now? It's 2 p.m. Pacific time.
You beat me to it. I was just about to ask you. It is 8 a.m. here.
On Sunday.
On Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm in the future, and I'm pleased to tell you that everything is well in the future.
Oh, good, good.
Don't ask me for the lottery numbers because I'm obliged legally not to be able to give you them.
Everybody in Australia has to sign a form, do they?
Yes, you do. Actually, when you come in the country now, they make you sign a form not to give lottery numbers away to anyone in a previous part of the world. Previous part of the world. I probably should be careful with how I use that phrase. That's probably not the best phrase to use, but I think we should pull back and tell the audience how we came to be buddies and friends, right? Because we've been buddies now for I've lost count. We've been having that much fun. I've lost count, but I reckon it's probably about June, July.
Yeah, it's got to be almost 3 months now, my man. Got to be 3 months. And so Jake and I hate long distance, so we use Facebook to call each other all the time.
It's true. We don't even schedule it in. We just hit the button, and then if you're available, you're available. If you're not, you're not.
Yeah.
We jumped into the Powerboys Training with Les Brown. We both wanted to be speakers, didn't we? And how could we facilitate that? Well, let's do some training with the guys that are the best in the world at doing it. Les Brown was someone we'd already been following. The opportunity came up because of COVID-19. And how many opportunities are coming out this time? I'm sure we'll move into that in a minute, but there are many and they are vast.
Yes.
We seized it. And we were both lucky enough and worked hard enough, I will say, to get chosen to speak at the Powerboys Summit. And outside of that, we formed a mastermind group, Speakers Speak, which we'll be jumping on a call a little bit later today. I'm trying to think how many are in that group. There's about 8 or 9 of us, isn't there?
Yeah.
And we all just help each other out. We all share our material with each other, practice it with each other, and polish up on stuff. So that's how it came to be. And now we're in the Thinking into Results course with John Tallarico as well.
Yeah. It seems we follow each other's tails around.
Yes, it certainly does. So, Michael, tell me about. You do so many things. I'm not sure which one we'll focus on, but let's go. I reckon we'll go with the pet business, right? Because you run a family pet business.
Yes.
And you've been involved with that for a long time. Yeah.
Well, you know what, Jake, to be honest, I very thankfully, I don't run the pet business anymore. It has a wonderful, brilliant woman that runs it for my family. I give that business direction. I give it real marketing power. I give it perspective and like long-term planning, but I have achieved one of those things that a lot of small business owners don't achieve, which is freedom and from the business, right? So I don't work. It's the old saying, I don't really work in my business anymore. I work on it. And that really is the type of experience that I've been able to achieve in the last, it started out about 5 years ago, the journey, and really culminated a couple of years ago as I realized that the people I had in place were far better, much better at running the everyday stuff than I ever was or ever was going to be. And frankly, I was happy about that. I was very happy about that. So I put some people in some awesome positions, let them go about their business, and stood back and practiced what a lot of the businesses that I coach now and work on their marketing with my other ventures. I have this saying, Jake. I always say to myself, less important and more valuable. And so what I did for my company was I made myself very valuable in the sense that I was able to give it direction and give it purpose and marketing power and everything else and leadership. But then I made myself very unimportant to the everyday activities, which gave me that space and that freedom to explore new stuff and meet phenomenal people like you. So that's a little bit about what that pet business is all about. Was that the question you were asking me, or I'm not sure?
Yeah, no, it was really. It was how it got started, right? But
yeah, well, my mom started it. So she actually went to a Tony Robbins event, because Tony lived not very far from where I live for quite some time. He married a girl from Aldergrove, British Columbia. So he lived in this area for quite some time. So he did a lot of his events 35 years ago in this area. And he was doing a big event. My mom got all jacked up to follow her dream, came home, converted the playroom of our house into a grooming studio. So she kicked me out. Me and my Sega Genesis had to go somewhere else. And she started this company, and she would bathe the big dogs in the bathroom tub. She'd walk them down the hall. She'd bathe the little dogs in the laundry room sink, which was just around the corner. And she started her business literally from a piece of plywood and a grooming, arm and the tools, and off she went. And she abused a lot of child labor in that venture. I'll tell you, a ton of child labor in that venture. My sister, especially on the marketing side, I remember 10, 11 years old, we spent countless afternoons as she was getting her business started in the first 6 months, literally driving down the neighborhood as if we were delivering newspapers. We're driving down in her Ford Aerostar van, and she would send us out with stacks of flyers, and we'd be stuffing mailboxes all up and down the neighborhoods, all on the east side of the city that I live in. So that she was highly abusive of child labor, and it was to her best interest because it helped her business succeed.
Well, it certainly did, right? And it's a successful business now. And interesting you talk about that, the old days of flyers. I remember when I used to do club and event promotions, and I used to hand out flyers outside the nightclubs. And I'm kind of, I think
it still works.
It still works? Okay, well, I'm glad you said that. I just thought, I was about to say, I thought print media is kind of dead, doesn't really work. You think it still works?
Share a quick story. I was under the same impression a couple years ago. And it really depends on who it is that you're marketing to. So this is one of the things that I find with a lot of business owners that I consult with and work with, and they have these fundamental beliefs about things that aren't necessarily completely true. And so one of the things that I realize is the target market that I would love to work with for the pet industry, for example, is a woman who I call Margaret. So Margaret is a literal client avatar. So we have a picture of her in my office. Like, Margaret has certain qualities. We know exactly who she is. She's a 52-year-old young grandma, right? She drives an Audi SUV. She lives in the eastern part of the city I'm in. Like, we know all these things about her. And frankly, she and a lot of the hot area, like that warm area in around who Margaret might be, will look at the newspaper. They will look at the newspaper's website. They will look at those places for sources of information. They will look at their local elements that are in print media. And so we've been running newspaper marketing for the last 12 months. And it's not only helped us survive through the tough COVID times, but it's helped some of our business, some of the elements of our business actually increase drastically in that time. And some of that I have to attribute to that particular marketing venture.
I think that's a fantastic point of view you've raised there, and it's thanks for sharing the story, because you're absolutely right in a way, and I didn't really think about that. Of course, things like newspapers, whilst people have been at home a lot in this time, they're still getting printed, still getting delivered. Yeah. And for a lot of people, that is their solid source of media, particularly most people read it. A lot of people read it every day. Yeah. It's the kind of it's part of their routine, it's part of their comfort. It's the place they go to for regular news, and they probably trust a lot of the things they see in there. So having an ad in there that relates to your business, of course, it's advertising your business, but targeted towards what they need, your target audience.
Yeah. Well, and so we use that. It's all about what you're using it for, right? So we use that particular venture and that concept to build trust, to remind them that we've been here for 31 years, to remind them that we're a trustworthy resource. And as things are chaotic around them, they can always trust just about pets. Right. And that was the theme. So being in their local newspaper made perfect sense, right? And being in like the adult living section, which is like 55 plus, that's what it's designed for. That made perfect sense. Yeah.
I definitely think print media can work. I definitely know Facebook ads work, and we still need to have a talk about that, particularly as the demographic of Facebook has really changed. It's funny, I think, because when Facebook first came out, everyone was over 40 was saying, what is this? I'm never going to go on it. I'm going to stay away from it. I don't need it. It's useless. Now, the actual demographic of Facebook, the majority of people using it are over 40. So it's
because when Facebook started, all of us were young enough that now we're all over 40.
Well, I wasn't.
I remember it. Yeah. And there was no Facebook.
Oh yeah, I remember that time as well.
Yes, but that is true.
Somewhere in my distant memory.
Somewhere back there? Yeah, you young pup.
You're pretty young as well, bro. You're not much older than me.
Enough.
Come on. What's been your biggest challenge with the pet business so far?
Oh, well, when I took it over was that I frankly didn't know what the hell I was doing. Right. I mean, when I took over that business, Jake, it was not in a very good situation. And I took it over because I felt like I just kind of had to. Like I felt like it was a necessity. Because my mom had put her house up as essentially a credit almost for the lease that she had on the property that she wound up building her business on. So she went from being a home-based business to then leasing out a spot in sort of the middle of Abbotsford, where I'm from. And she had a commercial setup there. And as collateral, in case anything was to happen to her on that 10-year lease that she signed, her house was up as collateral. And the business had gotten into a really tough spot. It had grown past what my mom was really comfortable controlling, I suppose, or leading. And my grandmother had gotten sick. So her idea of managing that business was at the other end of a phone, and she was yelling and screaming at her staff. So it had gotten to a point where the culture was rotten. There was no profitability in the company whatsoever. It was borrowing from Peter to pay Paul as usual. It was really, really, really struggling. And it had received some horrifying skill and advice on the accounting side of things. And this happens to a lot of business owners. I hear this story over and over again. Ours is particularly acute, but I hear it a lot. She had missed some payments to the government for both sales taxes and payroll remittance taxes. And those are bills that the government wants because we've collected that money on someone else's behalf, and they're saying, give it up, right? Yeah. It's not like it's income tax or something like that, which they're way more flexible on. And she had around a $27,000, $28,000 debt to begin with that ballooned up to well over $130,000 by the time I finally organized a deal. It was growing in penalties and interest. Literally, they would calculate it by the hour. They'd send you a letter every month, and it showed how much everything went up by the hour, Jake, by the hour.
Oh.
Can you imagine? Every month, right?
Not.
We have like 720 installments. Penalty, interest, penalty, interest, penalty, interest, penalty, interest, penalty, interest, like literally adding up every hour based on a percentage of her initial problem. So what was it? Like $25,000, $28,000 problem became $130,000 in a very short period of time.
Wow.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Pay taxes, folks.
Pay your taxes. Yeah. And for a lot of businesses, they would have folded everything. But in her case, she had put her house up. So if she went belly up on her company, the lease that she owned and the government would have pursued her residence. For sure. In some capacity. I don't know what that would have looked like, but they would have pursued it. So I thought, I have to jump in here and see if there's any way. And I figured I would give myself a 2-year window to essentially right the ship. And that was 12 years ago. And when I popped in, it didn't pop in. When I arrived, I literally had to let go of pretty much everybody. We went from, I think we had 10 staff at the time, and I drilled it all the way down to 4 and was replenishing and rebuilding because the culture was terrible. And I just went in and I almost worked every single hour there was at the customer service desk. And it was a really, really tough turnaround. And I look back on it, and honestly, dude, I don't know how we got through those 7 years. Like, how you look back on something and you go, wow, I don't know. How did we do that? The decisions we made, the crazy hours that we worked, like the things that we had to do, literally I was in this constant balancing act of just being able to make the ends meet that I needed to get things done and covered and go through it all over again a month later. So it was really quite the process. And in 7 years, we doubled the size of the company. Wow. So we gone up to just about 670,000 in revenue after 7 years, which isn't anything to write home about. It's not crazy numbers, but we were averaging probably about $30, $35 a head. So we were doing a decent level of business. But here's the thing: we would do that much. I finally got the books back from the accountant. And this is when I knew that I literally had no idea what I was doing. And the only reason we were there because I was good at customer service from my first career. And I was a hard ass worker. I just knew how to work my tail off because I got this. It was in February of 2016. And I received a very sobering document from our accountant. Because I was like, man, we must have made money this year and everything else. And like a lot of business owners, I had no idea whether we made money or not till the end of the year, which is scary now to think about that. But now I know every day, but I used to not know until the end of the year. Get our books back, and we'd done $670,000, whatever the exact number was, close to that. And we profited $2,223. Oh,
shocker.
That's it.
That is great.
And we were $28,000 into our overdraft. We were $20,000 on our MasterCard, and we owed Amex something as And I looked at that. I remember sitting in my office, dude, and I was like, I'm done. I have got nothing left. I'm sure you felt that way being a business owner and hard worker yourself. You're just like, I was all out of ideas. I had put into practice almost everything I could conceive. And I had nothing left. And I was so exhausted. The one vacation I had taken in those 7 years was to go and run a marathon in Halifax. So my wife and I took 8 days or whatever. We flew to Halifax, right?
Yeah.
Which is a long ass way away. So it's 5 time zones from where I am, or 4.5 time zones from where I am. That's how big Canada is, right?
Yeah. Oh, wow. So still in Canada? That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so we flew there, and I ran a marathon to raise money for diabetes research. That was my idea of a vacation. And I did that. I mean, my wife is from that area, so that's one of the reasons we went back. But
okay.
But it was like, I had nothing, dude. And I just remember crying. Like, I just remember completely breaking down, embarrassing in my office. Because I was like, we've done all these things. We've worked so hard. And yet here we were. Mm. And I remember my mom coming in, and I think I was just like staring at my computer, kind of just bewildered. And she probably had seen that I was crying, I imagine. She asked me what was wrong. I told her it was wrong. And she just said, you know what? I believe we can figure this out. And as much as it was a true spark in the darkness, that idea that I believe we can figure this out really helped me. You know, she said, we've always figured it out in the past. We will figure it out this time. And it was just a teeny tiny spark, you know, on my kindling of courage that had not been lit for quite some time. And I, as so often is the case, I asked the universe for help. I was like, I need somebody. I need something. I need a coach. I need a coach. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Hard work and sheer will of customer service has got me here, but it's not going to get me to the next level. There are holes all over this ship of a business that I'm running, but I don't know where they are and I don't know what to look for. And so and in the summer of that year, my prayer, as it were, was answered. So I found a mentor and a business coach, and I took, my mom was not willing to pay the $15,000 for the 2-year course that I took, the 2-year program I took. And so I took a salary cut of $10,000 annually in order to take the course.
Wow. That's a risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what year was this, Michael, that this happened? Sorry.
What's that?
What year was this?
So that was 2016.
2016. Okay, 4 years ago.
Yeah. Sorry about the barking, buddy. My dog's upstairs barking at the neighbors. So that was 2016. Yeah. And then essentially over the next 3 years, we almost doubled the size of the business again. We got it over $1 million. Our profitability went through the roof. I was able to train, lead, get out of the way, allow other people to grow. It was just this. And then I was given an opportunity to teach and coach for that same company, which gave me a huge boost of confidence that I knew what I was doing. And then had about 150 businesses that I coach every 2 weeks, that I was guiding and coaching all the time for that company, like through that venture that this mentor of mine was doing. I had a chance to do all sorts of really sort of, him and I would do private coaching stuff and for different companies and things like that. So learned that my instincts were great. Like I legitimately could know what I was doing. I just didn't have the skill set yet. I had the talent and not yet the skill. And once I started to marry those two things together, and then you polish that with hard work, the results really started to come. And then in the last few years, as I said, I've been able to regress myself out of just about Pets' everyday stuff, and then really start growing my media and creation company, because there was a huge problem that I faced. Well, we'll get into that in a minute. But I started to have the space in my life to do the media creation stuff, to start helping people with their marketing, and then to pursue other passions of mine, like professional speaking, like using my previous career on a stage in a different way, a way that fueled me, a way that I was that I wanted to use my power for. Like I wanted to use that for something rather than being a puppet for someone else's show. Right? I left my acting career with a sense of bitterness. I was so tired of everybody telling me how long to keep my hair, what type of beard I should grow, what type of food I should be eating, what my body weight should look like, where to walk on a stage, how to talk, how to move, don't move here, move. I just drove me crazy after a while. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. Like, this isn't art to me. It's art for the director. And I feel like a freaking puppet. Now, that's not every director, but there was a few of those. There was enough of them that I work with. And I was like, I don't love acting and performance so much that I'm willing to put in years and years and years of not having much artistic input.
Yeah, and constantly being told what to do.
Yeah.
We have a set of questions, but I think we're just going to roll with this dynamically, and that's a perfect segue actually to talk about, how you used to do acting and how you wanted to. You knew that you wanted to be on the stage, but you perhaps weren't quite sure what stage that was, and something that I believe the lady's name was Sandy Nicholson, and something I know she said to you at the time that you struggled with, and how that moved into the sculptor and the clay, which some of our audience may have heard about, but I want to hear a bit more about it right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll get to the Sandy story in a second, but I'll never forget this moment in third year. So I was in what they call a professional development program in Canada. So they're more expensive at university. They basically showcase you. And so the Bachelor of Fine Arts acting degree in Edmonton, Alberta, at the University of Alberta, is a very prestigious program. They audition about 400 every year, and they only take 12. So it's a very intense program, very difficult to get into. And you're with those same 11 other people for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you're the rock stars of the fine arts department. Like, it's that you get treated like gold. It's a very posh position to get to. And so we had in third year, you get this whole theater to yourself. Like, you have dressing rooms, you've got all this stuff. You're treated like royalty, right? And I remember sitting in the green room in third year and having a conversation with an old friend of mine, Nicholas Green, who's now become a playwright and an actor in Toronto. He's a great guy. Anyway, we're busy chatting, and he was just talking about how amazing this was and how he just loved what we were doing. And I said, you know what? I could love it or not, take it or leave it, man. He's like, what? What's wrong with you, right? You got these great roles. Everybody wants a part of us. We're going to go on an audition tour after this. We got directors wanting to come and work. Like, what's wrong with you? And I said, I envy singers. I envy singers. The ability for them I want to sing this song, right? And now I know, that was naive of me to think that singers don't have handlers, and they're not also being a character on stage, but they get more choice to a certain degree to choose exactly this, and this is what I want to be, right? And I was like, I envy the fact that singers can go out and they can just belt it out. Like, they can have a great time. They can just indulge in their talent. And, they just get to be themselves. I thought they would get to be themselves on stage rather than always pretending to be someone else and something else. And I really felt that way. I still feel that way. And it came with this. I think I felt that way the whole time, Jake. At least for the last couple of years, I felt that way a lot because I had this sinking feeling throughout a lot of my tenure there that this was where I was, but it maybe wasn't where I was supposed to be. And that came with this weird level of guilt because, as you mentioned, my teacher, Sandy Nichols, she informed me at the end of first year that she thought I was super talented, that I was really great, that I could go professional right now as we speak, and that I need to stick around, though, and practice my skills and hone my talent and work on my stuff because I had a responsibility to my talent. I look back on that now, and I love that. I love that she gave me that quest. I love that she mantled me with that responsibility. But at the time, it inflated my ego. At the time, I used it for a lot of the wrong reasons. But it also had this weird adverse effect where, because I was struggling with my desire to even be there anymore, I was struggling with my desire to pursue acting as a career, I felt guilty that I had been bestowed this gift and these opportunities, and I was essentially just casually tossing them off when other people would have, crawling over broken glass for miles to be where I was. And that came with this real mantle of guilt for quite some time. It was very hard for me to shake it. And that bled into my other careers too, right? Just this idea that, man, I'm stuck. I'm totally, I should have done something else with this opportunity, and I shit all over it, essentially. So there was a lot going on there, but it was supposed to happen. It was supposed to happen. I was supposed to go to that school. I was supposed to learn those things about the stage and storytelling and performance and all that stuff. I was supposed to learn them all. My voice was just meant for something a little bit different. And if I ever decide to pursue that career again, then I know I've got that bedrock and that foundation to work from. But, it was supposed to happen the way it did.
Absolutely right. And if it didn't happen the way it did, then you wouldn't be led to what you're doing now, which is using your voice to help motivate and inspire others. It was you, like I said, you knew you wanted to be on that stage. You just didn't know exactly how it looked and what you'd be projecting out to the audience once you were on there. I actually did a little bit of acting training myself, and for a while there thought that was the stage that I wanted to be on, and wasn't until recently embarked on looking at how you do public speaking, how you deliver it, how it comes together, and what your message is that you want to deliver to the world, that I found that, yeah, that's the stage I want to be on. It's right now it's a virtual stage, and that's absolutely fine.
Absolutely.
I like to think in a few months' time it'll be a physical stage, and I can see people in front of me instead of having to see
right? You really get the crowd.
But I tell you what, I think it's actually all comes together perfectly for people like us that are wanting to get in front of the camera at this time, because I find that being able to be comfortable in your familiar spaces, in your office, in your home, in your garage, wherever you like to sit and be, you can do that in the comfortability of your own home, the familiarity of your own home, and using the internet to speak to people is the perfect kind of precursor to the actual stage. So it's been working pretty well for me, and I can see it's been working well for you.
Yeah, I think, you know what, Jake, I think a lot of people, they make these choices, and I don't know about what it's like in Australia. It's probably pretty similar, but in Canada, there's this real emphasis for kids to make choices at 18 or 19 years old, what their career path is going to be. And that's so ridiculous. Like, let's just be the parents out there right now. Let your kids explore, like, in all honesty, right? Like, some kids are blessed with knowing, and that's great. But, give them the opportunity to explore a career, if that means going to school, if that means doing those things, but also give them permission to go, you know what, this didn't fit. And if you're listening right now and you're wondering, man, is this fitting with me right now? This is a COVID pandemic has given us this reset button across a lot of the planet, right? This is a great opportunity to reignite some old passions of yours, perhaps, and polish over some new skills or polish up some old ones. And I think that we gotta use that. We gotta use that to our advantage, because so many of us get stuck in a career path and a choice because that's what we made. So now we're dedicated to it. I love the Friedrich Nietzsche quote, he says, many people are stubborn in pursuit of their actions, few in pursuit of their goals. And this to me is indicative of a group of a massive cross-section of society that's like, this is what I do, therefore that's who I am, rather than this is what I want to accomplish, therefore this is who I'm going to become. They're two different sets of questions. And I think if we encourage kids to go, what would you love your life to be about? Like, how would you love to impact the world, rather than, do you want to be a lawyer or do you want to be a doctor, right? Just let them explore a little bit. If they want that, awesome, go ahead, fire away, right? But there's very little to be gained by being pigeonholed and staying stuck there. And if you feel that way, man, oh man, I would encourage you, explore some new stuff. This is a phenomenal time to explore some new ideas. And as Jake just beautifully put it, with the internet, there is zero reason why you can't explore these things from the comfort of your own home with very little risk at this point to anything or anyone.
Exactly right, and I couldn't agree with that more, Michael. And it's funny what you say there. What is it like in Australia? It's a little bit more relaxed here. People do seem to be a bit more relaxed, but I can definitely resonate to what you say in the UK. There's a premise there. I'm fortunate enough, and I thank my parents if they're watching this live or later, that they didn't put that on me. You must have a decision made by the time you leave school. I was kind of, hey Jake, you go out and do what you want. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I qualified as a plumber because I knew I enjoyed working with my hands. Sure. And I'd done a little bit of work experience in it, so that's what I fell into. I'd recommend that to anyone who likes working physically and doesn't perhaps know what they want to do. But yeah, this idea that you have to have it all planned out, because I went into plumbing, did many things along the way. It wasn't until I was about 29, 30 years old, I started to get a grasp of what I wanted to do and the steer I wanted to go towards. And, that's a 12-year period, even more. Sorry, it's a 14-year period, quick maths, since I left school. And I spent all that time playing around and figuring it out. And I think your 20s, for me, I don't know if you'll agree with me, but I think your 20s are a time for trying new things out, for exploring and going on adventures and figuring out who you are and what you really want to do in the world. And that can be fine to be 10 years of trying stuff out and failing and meeting, running over obstacles and challenges and letting some of them run over you, because that's where you learn when things
yeah,
on the blind side.
Totally.
Yeah. Now, if you had to start and I suppose you've answered it there in a few in the real way of explaining how the business came around and some of the challenges you've been through. But let's say you had to start the pet business all over again tomorrow. What would you do differently?
That is a great question. I'm struggling to answer it simply because the education process that running that pet business offered me was one that if I'd started over again, I still wouldn't have. So knowing what I know now, that good businesses are successful because they have great marketing, even if it's subtle, right? They understand that a certain percentage of everything they do has to be devoted to encouraging new customers and old customers to return. I would make that a far bigger part of my focus, knowing what I know now. I think it would have helped me spend money a lot differently. I was trapped in the idea that I thought marketing was advertising. They're not the same thing. Advertising is a part of marketing, but they're not the same. And so I spent a lot of money, wasted a lot of money on bad ads that didn't work, ads that didn't have the traction that I wanted them to have. And so I blew through a lot of resources pushing to grow the company. And they just didn't have the results that really we needed and really we wanted. So I think that I would have, if I was to do it over again, Jake, it's hard to divorce it from knowing what I know, right? Because the education process has been the most valuable piece for me. So part of that education process has to be the trials and failures, as you just alluded to, right? Yeah. You've got to get run over by the truck every once in a while to realize that it's there. So it's a tough question. I think that I would certainly, as I said, market a little bit differently. I would have been a little more strict and stringent as to how I hired, how I grew my team. Now there's a very structured process for that, but when I first got started, there wasn't. We used a lot of the mirror test, right? Oh, perfect, good, you can get hired. So, yeah. So that was, I think those are the few things, right? Like making sure that the core values of the company and what the soul of the company is all about and what's intention is clear from the get-go would be something. And then making that an element of A, how we market, but also, where's my finger? There it is. A, how we market, and then B, how we grow the team and what type of people we want to bring on.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the first things you mentioned there is, attracting new customers to the business and getting existing customers to return. I think it's very important these days. It has always been very important, but I think now in the digital age more than ever to make your business a customer-focused, customer-driven economy. Because why do you have your business? You have it to serve your customers, of course, to make you some money, but it's really all about the customers. I was with Eric Cabrera on an interview the other day, and we were talking about this and how do you know what your customers need? Well, you have to ask them, and if you're not asking them, then you don't know, and if you don't know, then you can't serve them better or to their full potential. So,
bammo to that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll tell you what, that's something you just learned me a lesson there, that marketing and advertising are two different things. Now, I knew that inherently in my brain, but it's an interesting point, isn't it?
Well,
really, just expand a little bit more on that.
So for me, I always say that the perfect diagram of a great business is an hourglass. And 49%, and this is in my opinion, I've done a bunch of business coaching now and had a bunch of coaching done for me. And this is something I've kind of come up with. So but in my opinion, 49% of all of your resources should be spent on the top portion of that hourglass, 49% on the bottom portion of that hourglass, and 2% in the middle. Now, what are these portions of the hourglass? The top portion is marketing. The middle portion is the moment of sale, that process where they buy. And then the bottom is the delivering of what you have sold to somebody, right? Or AKA the operations of your company. Predominantly business owners go into business because they're really good technicians. They were great at doing something, and now they've got into business for themselves. Like could be great as a plumber, and now you go into business as a plumber on your own. That is how most entrepreneurs get started. They are good at something. They're great at something. They have a desire to have their own company, or they have a different way that they want to do it than the company they're working with right now, and therefore they open their own business doing the same thing. Right? So that's predominantly how a lot of business owners get started. So therefore, they're really good at the operations side, and they spend far more than 49% of their resources on the ops side and very little on the marketing side. And by resources, I mean three predominant things: effort or time, creativity, and money. Those are essentially the only three resources that any person ever has access to. Your sheer effort or your time commitment, however you want to look at that. Your creativity and how you get something. A lot of the time, I bet you can imagine a creative way of getting something done, Jake, that saves you both time and money, right? So creativity is a resource. And then, of course, money itself. Buy other people's skills and attributes. Those are the three resources that we have. And so when I say 49% of resources, you've got to look at it and go, okay, well, I have a budget for my marketing, so I'm paying for someone else's time and creativity. So a chunk of my budget, right, is for this. But it's not meant to be, it's meant to illustrate a point that you should be spending a fair amount of your resource capital on continuing to grow your company by new customers and existing customers. And I consider everything that happens, every single thing that happens, Jake, before they say yes to buying, marketing.
Yeah, got it.
So there's ads are in there for sure. For a lot of company, ads are in there. Billboards could be in there. But that also comes down to your brochures. That comes down to perhaps training and educating your staff on how to market and persuade better, right? It comes down to all sorts of things. But the reason I love the example of the hourglass is twofold. One, I think it illustrates the idea that great entrepreneurs sit in the middle. They sit in the leverage point. They sit in the sale moment. Not that they're selling to their clients necessarily. Like Richard Branson doesn't sell to his clients anymore. But that guy is always selling his teams on his ventures. He doesn't spend any time operating his companies. He looks at some KPIs and metrics, I'm sure. He doesn't spend a lot of time marketing his companies, although he used to spend a ton of resources there, right? But technically speaking, Richard Branson now sits at the sale position. Great entrepreneurs sit there all the time. They're always at that juncture. They're hands-on in the moment where they have to get somebody to say yes, because that's the control point, right? But it's also the way that a business owner can go from being a business operator and being essentially a highly paid self-employed person to being a business owner, because that's where they get the most leverage. 2% of their time for 98%. Right? So that's where the leverage point is in that moment.
Love that. And that's, I think that's a journey we're both going through, right? From going from operator to owner now. I know that's something we're both trying to work on together. And I'm excited to see it happen, because I know it's going to happen for us both.
Yeah.
Now, our final question, then I've got some rapid fire questions, which I didn't give you beforehand, but I wanted to just hit you with. If you could give 3 hot tips and perhaps a couple of book recommendations to anyone wanting to get started with their own small business or thinking about going out as an entrepreneur?
Mm-hmm. So, hot tips. Okay. Think about how you want to market what you have first. And when you think about that, so think about the method and divide that between tactics and strategy. So what I mean by that is that strategy is an overarching way you want to do something, right? So I'll use an example from a friend of mine. He has a merchant services company. We're doing some marketing work for him. And so they do the debit, Visa, MasterCard machines, that type of thing, right? His way of operating right now, Jake, is that he creates great relationships. He's a super charming dude, and he can press the flesh and make a sale almost every single time. But that's not scalable. Like you can only be in so many places at one time, and it's going to be a struggle to get past a certain volume of work because he can't handle anymore, right? So, but his strategy has been to build wonderful relationships to build his company. That's been his strategy. He has all sorts of tactics. Chamber of Commerce, BNIs, men's networking groups, general networking groups for businesses, knocking on doors. Those are all tactics, but the strategy is building relationships. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of business owners get distracted by all sorts of different tactics. Oh, I'm going to do Facebook ads, or I'll do Instagram ads, or I'll do YouTube stuff, or I'll do paper ads, or they get distracted by tactics. And what they should have before then is a concrete strategy. What's the overarching strategy for your company to market itself? So that's tip number one. Is it doesn't matter how brilliant the idea is, if nobody's interested in buying it because you don't know how to market and sell it, you're still dead in the water.
Yeah. I know that one. Yeah, doesn't matter. You get the best products in the world, why you don't know how to sell it.
Yeah, you don't know how to sell it, aka market it, because most of sales happens all before somebody says yes. You and I both know that.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So that's tip number one. Tip number two: systemize. Systemize. Right? Always build systems into your company. You may be a genius at what you do, but you became a genius somehow, right? You didn't pop out of the womb being a great plumber, Jake, right? Somebody taught you. There was a structured process to teach you, and there was a structured process probably to give you more tips. You may be apprenticed. You did all sorts of things, right? But so many entrepreneurs I find believe that they are what they have inside their heads can't go to somebody else. They like, I know so many people that are great at what they do. Therefore they go, if they're not as good as I am, why would I possibly have them do this job? Because they can't be as good as you until you give them the chance and the system and the process to get there, jackass. Like, it's not possible. Right? But we get stuck. They get totally stuck in just believing that they should be replaced because that's what they did. But that's not what they did. They took probably years to develop the skill set that they have now. Right? So processes and systems, start them from the beginning. Document what you do. Document how you perceive things and how you think and what questions you ask, so that when it comes time to start hiring and growing your team, because your business is growing, you've got something there to work with, to hand over, even if it's rough, that they can start to go, okay, I can see how Jake thinks. I can start to see how Jake thinks. Right? So that's tip number two. Tip number three is focus on your brand. Your brand, I love this definition. Your brand is what people say to others and talk about your company when you're not there. Yeah, that's what your brand is.
Yeah.
Right? And the core part to that is, if we drill down just a little bit deeper on that, that's predominantly about what's your story. Not like the details, but is it a rags to riches story? Is it a like, I went away and I came back with this information kind of story? Is it a quest? Is it like, what kind of story is this that is your company's brand? Like Paddock Blade, right? It needs to have a narrative. Like, the brand has got to have a story behind it that people can easily tell somebody else, because we forget the details all the time, but we never forget the story.
True.
Right? I'll bet right now, if you think back to your favorite Marvel superhero movie, which one would it be?
Probably the Hulk. Is that a superhero movie?
Yeah. Are you not a superhero movie fan? Am I picking the wrong genre right now?
Bad example. But
Okay.
What's Thor? Thor one?
Yeah.
Thor. Then there you go. Thor.
There you go. Thor. So I'll bet you could walk through the narrative of Thor in 5 to 10 minutes, but you're not going to remember all the details, right?
No.
But you could walk through the narrative. So the idea is that your brand should be a walking, talking story that other people can share that is your company. So those are the three big things, right? Focus, understand what your marketing strategy is. How are we going to market this thing? Like, what are we going to do? Like with Paddock Blade, how are we going to do this? You've chosen online marketing, specifically social media marketing, as a strategy. There's all sorts of now internal tactics, right? Like you and I could discuss tactics forever, but as you said, you're not using the newspaper. You're not using farming magazines. You're not using all sorts of things. They're not a part of your strategy. That was your choice. The strategy is to use online marketing, specifically social media marketing, to pull this off. Awesome, cool. And then there's tactics within that strategy. Second to that is systemize. Always think about that. In other words, practice that idea that I was giving before. Be less important and more valuable. Just think about it, you guys. If you're starting your company, anybody watching this, if you're doing something that you believe nobody else can do, then you do not own a company. You own a job. And that may be very blunt and hard for people to hear, but that is the truth. You don't own a company. A company operates on its own. A company is an asset. What you own is a perhaps very high paying, but also very high risk job. Because as soon as you stop, everything stops. My mentor, the guy who I took all this business training from, that was the one thing he could never accomplish, Jake. He is stuck. He was running a $2 million a year revenue coaching company, right? So that's a pretty good coaching company.
Oh, yeah.
But he was the only salesperson he had. So as soon as he stopped producing, as soon as he stopped tap dancing on the stage and selling his product, the whole system ground to a halt. He could never get out. And when COVID hit, because he was doing, seminars, like live seminars. So when COVID hit, he was toast. He pivoted to doing online stuff. So he survived, but he went from 15 staff down to 3. He had a beautiful office that he had to give up, right? And he lost 50, 60% of his clientele, and he had no way of selling new stuff.
Yeah, you got to be dynamic. You got to be ready.
Well, and he never systemized, Jake. He made himself important all the time.
Yeah. A quote that keeps coming to my mind as you say that is, a quote I hear, and I'm not sure where it came from. I hear it a lot. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. And I think if we swap the word out, nice, to be valuable. So it's more important. It's important to be valuable. It's important to be valuable, but it's more important. I've completely got it wrong. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be valuable. Yes. I got it.
There you go.
That's how I want to repurpose that. I like to repurpose a quote, but that's it. That's it, right? Because of course you're an importance to your business. Your business is important to you, but what's more important is you bring value to the business and the people that are in it by implementing those things that you just said.
One other question. One other thing that I'll add, Jake, that I always ask my business clients is I ask them what type of business they want to run. So I say, okay, Jake, where would you love to live? Like, this would be paradise for you. You would go there, you would live there, you would take your beautiful girlfriend with you, and you could maybe never come back. Like, this would be an amazing place to live your life. Where would it be?
Well, I'm already here. I'm in Australia.
Okay. So it would be Australia.
Yeah.
Good. Notch for you. Excellent. Okay. So now, if you could live on the beaches of Australia, work 10 hours a week, and make $250,000 a year, would you be happy?
Sounds more than reasonable.
Okay. Or would you prefer to run a company that does $50-60 million in revenue? You work 60 hours a week, but you make $1 million. Which would you prefer?
That's a good question. I'd be leaning towards the first one because it sounds like I'd have more time to live.
See, that's the question that most business owners need to ask themselves at the very beginning, Jake. As we talked about, if you don't know where you're going, how the hell can you build a plan to get there? And a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm just going to build a plan to sell some stuff. Yeah, but for what? Like, to what end? Where the hell are you going?
Yeah.
And so when I ask them that question, they'll often, almost every business owner I know takes the latter. Because
Really?
the time is the thing they want to carve out. Very few want to build a 50, 60, $100 million revenue company that requires 60 hours of their week.
Yeah.
It's not what they want. Most of them do not want that. Most of them want a company. So therefore, systemize. Therefore, become a leader, not a manager. Therefore, build processes and promote from within so that you can only have to work 10 hours and not 60. I know lots of business owners that are making 200K, but they're still working the 60 hours. Why? Because they never got out of their own freaking way.
Love that.
They made
Love
the business all about them.
Love the way you package that up. Love that. And what are you reading at the moment, Michael? What books
Reading.
do you have?
Okay. So, Traction by Gina Wickman. Great book on systemization. If you're going to be a business owner, you don't have to take all of it. Take parts of it that you want, but it's great. Traction is an awesome one to sink your teeth into. I am not going to go for some of the old standard favorites like the Think and Grow Rich and those ones. I mean, those are
recommended Think and Grow Rich.
What's that?
You'd be the first person who hasn't recommended Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. Those are normal, right? So if you want to build an online business, okay, if you want to build an online business and be present and understand how story is so important for that, Russell Brunson stuff is great. Right? The expert secrets, the .com secrets books, fantastic way of sinking your teeth into how online marketing really works, how to build trust that way and how to do it that way. And then last but not least, I think all entrepreneurs need to read this book, The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, I've got that on audiobook. It's a good one.
Yeah. To me, those are... Because businesses are systems that deliver a result to a client at the end, right? Businesses are a system. They're a series of systems. That's all they are. Like when someone walks in and they want to buy a McDonald's franchise, they're not buying the sign, right? They're not buying yes, that they buy the equipment, but that's not why they buy McDonald's. They can go the equipment anywhere. They buy McDonald's because of the system. So as a business owner, if you want something that's sellable, that becomes an asset that's working when you're not there, you need a process and a system. It's a series of systems that attract a client, sell the client, then deliver the deliverables to the client. That's all it is. It's a system through that hourglass.
I like the way you tied that in to the hourglass. You're a great speaker, man. I always love spending time with you in whatever
What
format.
do you do with an hourglass, Jake, once you've poured the customer through? Once all the sand is through an hourglass, what do? You
get them back in the hourglass.
No, you just
turn it. Okay. This is why we need to do some business coaching.
Right? You just flip it.
Right.
They just go right back through that whole process again, right?
Yeah. So I kind of got the right answer. Get them back through the hourglass, but you just turn it by doing that. You don't have to go and chase them and get them back into it.
That's right.
All right, quick fire question. I've just came up with these on the side while I've been speaking to you. Just the first thing that comes to your mind. Do you believe in aliens?
No.
What is your biggest fear?
Dying young.
What is your favorite food?
Pizza.
What is your favorite place to go on holiday?
Oh, Germany.
Interesting. Describe yourself in 3 words. That's well. You can swear if you want.
No. Yeah. I am a 3 words. Okay. Competitive, creative, and how do I put this? Affectionate.
I like it. And yeah, I was going to say, how would other people describe you? But I'd agree with all of them. I'm ticking all them boxes in this short time I've known you. But it's been great to spend some time with you and draw some wisdom from that fabulous brain of yours. I look forward to working with you. I know, in fact, we'll touch on that Thank You Media, which I've taken you on board for with my company, Paddock Blade. We're going to create some fantastic graphics with that business. I look forward to that. If anyone wants to find you, Michael, where can they find you? Where's the best place to go for them to find you?
MichaelBridgman.ca. I put it right down there in the nameplate down at the bottom there. So MichaelBridgman.ca, that's my name. You can find me at Michael Bridgman page on Facebook. And my Instagram handle will be changing. I've got my wife on that. She's going to figure out a different Instagram handle because mine is too old manish, she said. So I won't share my Instagram handle until I have one concretely figured out. Okay,
and just by magic, guys, both Michael's website and his handle for Facebook has appeared in the comments. Don't know how that happened, but there's a technology. Ta-da! Michael, it's been great to spend some time with you. I'll look forward to having you back on the show at a later date. Thank you very much, sir. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Oh, thanks so much, buddy. Keep rock and rolling, my friend. I'm so freaking proud of you. You've got no idea how proud I am of your journey and how awesome this is going. So much love all the way across the Pacific from me to you, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate that. I'm going to keep on rocking.
Okay. Ciao.
Take care, mate.